Yes, because you all know I'm such a big fan of Winnie the Pooh, right? Hey everyone, welcome to the review. Here's my review for the movie Goodbye Christopher Robin. Yes, Goodbye Christopher Robin stars Domhnall Gleeson, Kelly Macdonald, Margot Robbie, and Will Tilston. And this movie is directed by Simon Curtis. Yes, the guy who gave us the movie My Week with Marilyn. That was his second film, and this film is about the creation of Winnie the Pooh. Yes, the story of this movie takes place in the First World War in England, and it's about A.A. Milne, the guy who created Winnie the Pooh. He wrote the book, Winnie the Pooh. And it's about him, fighting in the war, showing the dark ages and the tragedies he's went through during the First World War in England. And it's about him and his wife having a child, and he names this child Christopher Robin. And basically it's about him playing with his son, and basically him and his son have this really nice relationship with each other, and they basically together create the world of Winnie the Pooh, which inspires him to come up with the idea of the story of Winnie the Pooh. And that's basically the gist of the story, Goodbye Christopher Robin. I saw the trailers for this movie, and this movie looked like a very interesting movie. Even though I'm not the biggest Winnie the Pooh fan, like everyone knows that I am not a Winnie the Pooh fan. I never really watched the cartoon series. I've seen a couple of the movies, like The Many Adventures of Winnie the Pooh, which was The 2011 Winnie the Pooh movie was pretty good, but I'm not a Pooh fan. I'm not a Winnie the Pooh fan. There's some good characters. It's colorful. It's great for children and stuff, but it just wasn't my thing. When I was a kid, I never really watched it, and as an adult, I never really watched it. So I was never a big Winnie the Pooh fan. But this movie kind of seemed like a Saving Mr. Banks, but for the Winnie the Pooh and stuff. Saving Mr. Banks is definitely a movie for me because I'm a Mary Poppins fan. And I will say straight up, if you are a fan of Winnie the Pooh and you're curious about the story of how Winnie the Pooh came to be and how the author came up with the story, this movie is definitely for you. This is definitely a movie you're going to find very fascinating, very interesting. Yes, I know people hate when I say that. I said that in my Little Pony review. I got a lot of hate in that review when I said, this My Little Pony movie is for My Little Pony fans. People got flipped the fuck out in that review, and people are like, no, this is for animated fans, not just My Little Pony fans. I'm like, well, the movie's called My Little Pony, the movie, and it's a lot of references to the show I heard and stuff, so I think it's for My Little Pony fans. And I think this movie is not just for Winnie the Pooh fans. I just think Winnie the Pooh fans will enjoy it more because, again, they love the story and the characters, and they'll be curious to see how all these characters came to life and everything. So I think if you're a fan of Winnie the Pooh, it'll help the nostalgia, and it'll help the enjoyment value of the film. But again, this movie is also maybe for some families and stuff. This movie is very, very dark and very, very depressing at times. But yeah, this movie is for more audiences, not just Winnie the Pooh fans. I just think Winnie the Pooh fans will enjoy it more than most audiences. And yeah, I like this movie. This was a good movie, Goodbye Christopher Robin. I had some gripes about the film, and yes, I'll get to those first. I'll get to those in a second, but I'm going to talk about the positives. There are some really great things in this film. One thing, the performances. The performances are really strong. Domhnall Gleeson as A.A. Milne was a great casting choice. He is so good. He has fantastic chemistry with Christopher Robin, his son, played by Will Tilston. They have great chemistry with each other. Every scene with them two is so good. Kelly Macdonald's in the film. She's good. Margot Robbie's in the film. She's really good. The performances as a whole is really strong. And again, how you see these characters come up with the ideas and the stories of Winnie the Pooh is interesting. Even though I'm not a fan and I don't really care that much, it's interesting how they all come up with the concept of Winnie the Pooh. And there is some dark things in this movie, and it's ballsy. This movie is very ballsy because it's supposed to be a kid's film, but it's not afraid to go dark and depressing because this is during the First World War. It really shows the heartache and the tragedies that this main character went through when he was fighting in the war and just what all these people go through. It's very depressing at times and very emotional and stuff, and yeah, at times it's hard to watch, and I'm like, wow, this movie's very ballsy for going that dark. And yeah, there's some really good direction. Again, I love this director, Simon Curtis. I love what he did with My Week with Marilyn. My Week with Marilyn is a better film, again, because I like Marilyn Monroe and I liked how he did the story, but there was some very good direction in this movie, and there's some pretty good writing as well. And yeah, I enjoyed the story. I enjoyed the all-around story, and I liked the performances, and I liked the characters. My gripes about the film is the movie is tonally, it shifts tone back and forth. I feel like this movie is trying to be a kid's movie, but then it tries to be a very dark war film. Like when it goes back and forth and switching these tones, it feels odd. It feels very off. Like again, this is supposed to be a kids movie because the genre even says family kids film, dramatic film. But like anytime they go really dark, very depressing. They go overly sentimental, a little too sentimental for my taste, and yeah, it didn't. I don't know, all the scenes with him and his son, talking about Winnie the Pooh and stuff, I feel like that's what people want. Like, I get showing the dark scenes. They probably should have just shown that in the first, 10 minutes. But again, they go, back and forth with those scenes. They go dark, then they go happy, then they go dark, then they go happy and stuff, and I don't know, it didn't feel right. It felt very muddled and stuff, and they feel like the clashing of the tones really made the movie feel at times inconsistent, and I didn't like that. Sometimes the dark scenes were really cool, but I wanted more of him and his son, because that was the strong suit of the film, and him just coming up with Winnie the Pooh and everything. Yes, I felt like, again, they were trying to do the Saving Mr. Banks route, like how the movie Saving Mr. Banks goes back and forth with her in her past with her drunk father, and then also going back and forth with the studio, how they're coming up with Mary Poppins. But the difference with Saving Mr. Banks, the stuff with the drunk father ties into Mary Poppins. It ties into Mary Poppins. Like the father represents Mr. Banks and her aunt represented Mary Poppins, and how the whole story as a whole is them saving Mr. Banks and not saving the children. See, all the stories make sense as a whole. I felt like this movie had two almost different stories. Him in the war, all the tragedies of all these people where they're going through in England, and then Winnie the Pooh story. It didn't feel consistent. It felt very inconsistent with the tones and with the storytelling. So I don't like how they did that. They were both fine, like the dark story with the war and the tragedies is really good and interesting, and the scenes with all the Winnie the Pooh stuff is interesting. They just don't feel cohesive as a whole. They feel like almost two very different films. And I didn't like that. It felt very muddled and inconsistent, and that was a very big flaw. That was a very big flaw for me, in my opinion. I just didn't like that. And again, this movie is it's overly sentimental. It's a little sappy. It has a lot of melodrama in the film. And again, as much as, I liked seeing him create Winnie the Pooh, and it would have been more interesting if I loved Winnie the Pooh and everything. That's why I loved Saving Mr. Banks so much. Like, some people probably didn't find Saving Mr. Banks all that great because they didn't like Mary Poppins. So, scenes in, the scene in Saving Mr. Banks when they do the fly the kite scene, I love that scene. But if you don't like Mary Poppins, you'll find that scene just very corny and it'll mean nothing to you. I think if you're a fan of Winnie the Pooh, there are a lot of scenes in this movie that they come up with, really cool story scenarios that tie into the shows and tie into the movies of Winnie the Pooh. So if you're a fan of Winnie the Pooh, you're going to really love it and get a lot of nostalgia for all those scenes and everything. And that's the strongest part of the film. Again, I felt like all the dark and war and depressing scenes should have been the first 15 minutes, and then they got to the root of the story, and that's with him and his son coming up with Winnie the Pooh. That should have been the whole story. The dark stuff should have just been the very beginning, and then I think the movie would have worked better as a whole. But that's not what they did, so the movie came off very muddled and very inconsistent, but I still really like the film. It's a well-acted, it's a well-directed film. I felt like the screenplay was a little sloppy. I felt like the writers of this film, there was two writers. I felt like each writer of the film was writing a different story. And the director tried his best for what he had with the screenplay, but the screenplay, again, it's not bad, it was very inconsistent and it was a bit sloppy at times. But again, the direction is good, the stories are good, even though they don't clash perfectly together. The performances, the characters are interesting, and the way how they come up with the concept of Winnie the Pooh is very intriguing. I think a lot of people will really, really love this movie. Some people will not. Some people might not get on board with this movie, and I completely understand why. Again, this is not a movie I would definitely watch a lot because, again, I'm not a big Winnie the Pooh fan, but Winnie the Pooh fans will absolutely love this movie, and I think there is a target audience for this film, and I think a lot of people will love it, but I think a lot of people will not love it at the same time. But again, this is just all depends on taste and everything. This is definitely a movie I could see a lot of people not liking, and I could definitely see a lot of people but I can definitely also see a lot of people loving. So this is gonna be a love-hate sort of film, and I'm kind of in the middle. I'm more on the more like side because it's still a well-made film and has good performances. I was still enjoying myself while watching it. So yeah, I would recommend it, definitely. And if you're a Winnie the Pooh fan, definitely check it out. So yeah, on a scale of 1 to 10, I'm gonna give the movie Goodbye Christopher Robin a 7.2 out of 10. So yeah, by no means an amazing film, and by no means a film I'll watch a lot, but it was fine for what it was. So yeah, that was my review for the movie Goodbye Christopher Robin. So in the comment section below, please tell me, are you interested in seeing this movie? Do you think a story about Winnie the Pooh and the creation of Winnie the Pooh sounds like an interesting movie idea? Give me your thoughts and opinions. Comment below, let me know. And as always for this video, please like, subscribe to this channel, and join the dark side.